Awesome. That was awesome.
You guys are awesome.
No, you're awesome.
You are awesome.
Sir, you are awesome. Seriously.
Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.
Everything is awesome.
Welcome to this week's edition of Everything is Awesome. I am your host, Kev, and this is the show where we sit down and talk to awesome people about awesome things. And that's right, here we are, episode 199. It's a little bit more than 2 weeks since our last episode. I apologize for that. Life has been busy. What can I say? The good news is because of me being a procrastinator, our 200th episode is actually going to celebrate our 200th episode. Now, if you're listening to this episode right now, that means you are listening on Wednesday, December 17th. I wanted to get this out last week so that we could release the 200th episode this week, which was going to be before our Christmas episode. So, change of plans. Today's episode, who we'll get to the guest in just a moment here, is releasing today on the 17th. Our 200th celebration, which is me sitting down playing a game of Edge of the Empire with Mike D'Angelo, Jeff Stormer, and Taylor Keller. We are going to drop that on Friday the 19th and give you a full week to experience that episode. I'm really excited for you guys to listen to this. I'll talk more about that in the intro to next week's episode. But then on Christmas Day, Thursday, we're going to be releasing a very special Christmas episode that may or may not be related to one of the previous episodes in our Season 2 lineup here. So that's what you can look forward to over the next, we'll call it 7 to 8 days, which is going to be episode 199, episode 200, and episode 201 coming at you. Then we're going to get back to our normal weekly schedule, knock on wood. I think I have a couple holes that I have to fill between some January dates and June when we plan on ending Season 2 officially. And then we have, hopefully, a special summer series for you, followed by Season 3 coming at you. So a lot of stuff. And then actually also in the summer, there is some backlog stuff that we never released that we'll be releasing as part of our Season 1 archive. Okay, this week's episode. Very excited to get to this one. It's actually, when I started editing it, I was like, I don't think this is the episode I was thinking about with the guest. I thought it was a different guest, but it turns out I was right, and I'm so excited that we're finally getting to this episode I've recorded with Brian Revels, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Brian is a content creator, podcaster, filmmaker, writer, director. And what's really interesting about this conversation, you need to remember that we recorded this like mid-2024. So a year and a half ago, we sat down and recorded this episode. As you'll hear in the opening of this interview, I was like feeling real cruddy because I was at Fan Expo for 2024 and had a little bit of con crud going on. So, but that sets up the timeline where we were, and we talk about mental health. We talk about how we deal with and contend with mental health with content creation. What's more important is we sat down and Brian was the one that first first talked about Project 2025 with me. It was my first time hearing those words. And at the time, I was the optimistic, and I was thinking that we had nothing to worry about. And turns out Brian was right. I owe him some sort of dinner. Because, worst case scenario happened, at least from a certain point of view, and that's this podcaster's point of view. And if you listen to the summary, the snippets of Project 2025 that Brian goes over, it's eerie. It's eerie in a post-2025 world with our 47th president and what some may say these things have started to happen, have come true. or are still working on making them come true. Regardless, let's get right to it. I've made you wait long enough for this episode. Let's get right to my conversation with Brian right here on Everything is Awesome, only on awesomepodcast.com. We did Fan Expo Philadelphia over the weekend, and I just woke up on Tuesday, I guess it was, and I was like, I feel like crap, and I'm dying.
Wow.
Like typical con crud, I think, got me for a couple days.
Wow.
And I think I hear it in my voice that it's still, my voice sounds different to me. And that's probably from all the talking that we did over the weekend, because we were running a table for our Creative Arts Alliance that we have in Philadelphia here. And I typically do panels at all those conventions. So I was talking for like 3 days straight.
Well, hey, sometimes, we have to, just put it all out there. And then I don't know, maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was just, overextended. But, nevertheless, I'm happy to be here with you today, and just excited to, learn more about, this environment, and to share with you what it is that I have going on, that we have going on. And, the rest will be history.
Yeah. I was amazed at like all the different people that like through this program that like were super interested in being part of it. I was not expecting the turnout that happened. So it was really tough. And like, obviously I'm getting you in for season 2, but it was really tough, kind of like, all right, there's more people than I have spots available for the season. So this is going to kind of suck. And I have now, like, it's been so many months later and weeks later that people are like reaching out to me like, hey, I thought maybe like I could try to get on season 2. I was like, I'm sorry. I can't. I switched, and I don't know, as a creative yourself, how you cope and deal with like the mental stress of doing this all. But podcasting is like very much a solo person, endeavor. Like even if you have a regular co-host, typically most of the responsibility falls onto one person. And so for years I would just like burn out. And finally this time I said, I'm going to do seasonal shows. So when I brought Everything is Awesome back, I said, all right, season 2, we're going to do whatever until the end of June. Is like, we're going to have our last episode, then take the summer off, and then like recoup, reload. So that's how I've been dealing with it. So, do you run into that? Do you run into any burnout?
Absolutely. And, it's so crazy because so many of us are running into the same scenario. And keep in mind, we're only a couple of years out of COVID, where,
right.
That environment was like, okay, everyone is online. You don't have anything else to do. How do we connect with individuals, especially individuals in a certain creative space, right? According to genre, according to interests. And we get so consumed that we don't really look for the balance, or we don't look for the boundary in that. And especially being in the podcasting world, and also being a filmmaker, and also having a full-time job, and also having a family, and also having, which I think is very important that you mentioned this, having to still take care of mental health, I think is, for me, something that is situational, and it's going to change according to the culture and the climate. And so what I've done is I've taken a step back, and I'm doing the exact same thing you are, is, I don't feel pressure anymore to be relevant, meaning that the clickbait topics, right? The hashtag topics. I don't, for me, I'm in my 40s. I can't keep up with the 20-year-olds. They got way more energy. So let them handle it.
I feel that I am turning 40 in July. So like I am, and literally for the last year, because my best friend in the world, he turned 40 the day before I turned 39. So we're just over, he's just over a year older than me. And so for like the last year, like we've been talking, and my wife turned 40 earlier this year. And I was like, I'm not feeling it. Like, I think I think I'll be fine. And like, just like mental health wise, that's a roller coaster, but like just the fact that I was turning 40, I was like, it's not going to bother me. And then like very recently, because all year I've been talking about like, I'm going to do like this big kind of party, something that my uncle did when he turned 40, and he would have been like integral if he was still alive to me turning 40. And now as I'm approaching it, now that I'm like very close, like about 2 months away, I'm like, I don't think I want to celebrate like that. Like I think, and everyone's shocked by it. And I was like, I don't know. I think part of it is like, maybe it is getting to me. And I think the bigger part is like, my uncle isn't around to be part of this. So like, do I really even want to do this? And like on the day that I actually turned 40, we're on our way home for the Outer Banks. And I live in we're not on video now, but if you noticed, I was wearing my Philly City Connect hat. So, it's about an 8-hour drive from the Outer Banks to the Philadelphia area. Mm-hmm. So like my 40th birthday, I want to be driving, coming home and taking a nap as long as the kids aren't bothering me.
Actually, that's how you know you're turning 40, Kevin. You are on par. You will not be doing anything that the rest of us haven't done when we turn 40.
It is. And I don't know about you, because if you're a couple years into your 40s, there's a tiny generational gap. But for me, like, I have never felt like an adult. Like all these milestones you hit, having kids, getting married, buying a house, buying a bigger house, like all these milestones, I've never truly felt like an adult myself, because I still love my comic books. I still love my cartoons. I still love my superhero movies. I still love playing D&D and all these other stuff. So it is like, there's a balance, right? Like you said, there's a balance when you have a family and all those other things you got going on. Plus all your like side hustle / hobbies / like, I also want to incorporate fun into it. So it's a hard balance. So like, I love all that stuff. I have no time for it, especially like, so like last year I was not in a big creative mode. I did very little creatively, and I was in a like content, like, let me just take it all in. Let me watch all the movies. Let me watch all the TV shows. And I watched so much stuff last year, and it's the opposite this year. Now I'm like in my content creation mode where I want to do podcasting, and like we're talking about doing an actual play podcast and stuff. So there's so much things that you want to do or have to do, and so little time to do it all, that kind of circling back to the original point, this go around, and I felt like I was trying to do that for the last several years, but specifically now in 2024, like my mental health is so important.
So question, how have you been, if I can phrase this correctly, how have you been prioritizing mental health, given all of the sort of, items that you're juggling?
Well, first and foremost, it's if one of those things that I'm juggling drops or gets delayed, I just don't sweat it anymore. Like I feel bad, and I try to communicate with everyone to let them know what's going on. But if, like, for example, I got so bogged down with Fan Expo that I don't think I released an episode of the podcast in April. So now it's playing catch up for that, which is, again, back in the day, it would be like, let me try to get everything posted like this week. Right. So now it's like, realizing that, like, all right, I dropped the ball. I had other things going on that just took priority. And, letting everyone know, like, hey, it's coming, we should be caught up in the next like 2 or 3 weeks, because we're going to not doing daily, but we're going to do 2 a week until we're caught up. Mm-hmm. And then when it comes to like all the other things that you're working on, it's just a matter of like, sometimes you have to put it down, put it to the side. Obviously medication helps a little bit when you remember to take it on a consistent basis. Yes. Because I never, like, I feel like a fake news when I talk about my own mental health, because I know that there are so many more people out there that struggle with it worse than I do. Like I know they exist. I'm friends with people. I'm close with people who are way worse than I am when it comes to their mental health. I take like whatever I take is like 10 milligrams compared to like some people who take like 20, 30 or 40 milligrams. But my big issue was like the dealing with the death of my uncle who has been now gone for 2016 in November 2016. So almost 8 years. We were very close, like both in age and, just his family. And like, he was a huge influence for me. So losing him to cancer, like before he turned 50, I just kind of like powered through that for years. And then I finally said, you know what, maybe like I just need to deal with this somehow. And I chose medication. I haven't chose sitting down to speak to somebody, but yeah, I mean, just like, I think that I think if you're someone that juggles a lot, whether and it doesn't have to even be creative, right? Like it can be anything. If you're someone that juggles a lot of things, as long as you say to yourself, it's okay if I drop, it's okay if I fail, and allowing yourself that grace, to say that I can pick it up later. Obviously some things you can't, like children. You need to, that's number one priority, and making sure that they're taken care of and fed. But everything short of like anything that means that you have to sustain your own life or the life of your children, all that stuff you can drop and you can pick up again later. And I think while it's hard to reckon with that in the moment, as long as you give yourself the grace to do so and forgive yourself to do so is I think one of the like most important things for mental health.
Yeah.
How do you deal with it as a creative?
As a creative, so one of the things that I'm doing now is I intentionally put myself in circles where people understand me, right? Other directors, other producers, and I make sure that the focus is on the work. Because for me, I've been in a corporate space for, I don't know, 20 years. And it has been so stifling to me because I haven't, it's not that I haven't expressed that creative side or suppressed it. I've never had an opportunity to execute on it. And now, I mentioned COVID a moment ago. It has really given me the opportunity to redefine what that means and how I manifest it. So since COVID, I have been full throttle, right? Just with starting my media company and, launching a network and really having a bunch of opportunities out there that, frankly, I didn't think were going to happen so soon. So I made sure that I put myself in those creative circles that we could understand each other, right? Which I think that this, when I found your podcast, I think this was important to be able to, number one, to just dive in and to really take what I need to take from it in terms of other creatives, right? Mm-hmm. And really listen to what other people are saying, other people's best practices, and say, number one, I'm not alone. So I think that's the first thing, is realizing that whatever troubles or issues that I have, I'm not on an island, and I could always reach out for a support system. The second thing that I do is I'm transparent about it, right? Because they always say the first step is awareness. Now, for me, I've struggled with feeling powerless, right? For basically my whole life. Because if I find something and I'm not able to, like, it could be a project, it could be it could be an interview, and I'm like, no, I really, really, really want to get on this platform, because I think being on, the Jimmy Kimmel show would do me wonders.
Oh God.
Yeah. But
that is that's not the Jimmy you expect to hear, but that's the Jimmy I want to hear. Nothing against Fallon, but Jimmy Kimmel has, especially since he's been the host of that show, right? Like when he kind of stripped away that man show persona, he is, I think, a top tier talk show host and entertainer, who doesn't seem like like Fallon just steps right. I mean, he proves when he took over for Conan, like, I'm just a company guy. I want to make sure that everyone's good. And that's fine. You need people like that. But you also need people that are like Jimmy Kimmel or Conan O'Brien or even Craig Ferguson, who was a fantastic talk show host.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I completely derailed you. I am so sorry.
No, it's okay. Hey, I could always take a moment to talk about Jimmy. I actually went to his show and sat in the audience because I came across Jimmy, just a slight departure here. I came across Jimmy, I want to say probably in 2011. And, that was a year that I was traveling so much. I'm like, I don't really need cable. So one night I just happened to be just kind of, up and I just flipped it right. I only had 6 channels. So Jimmy was one of them. And I completely fell apart from laughter. So I was a fan of his ever since then. So I went to his show, met him. He's a really great guy. And, ever since then, I'm like, I made a conscious note, I will be on the show one day. So to get back to what we were saying, we have these points of frustration that when we're not a part of it, and we're not a part of what our design or plan is, we feel, or at least I feel powerless. And I know others do as well, because there are targets that we want to make, but when we don't make them, what do we do? And we redirect our focus. So, making sure that number one, I acknowledge it. And number two, making sure that my focus is in alignment with my path. And the third thing is sometimes you just have to surrender, because I think that, if being a director and a producer, your job is to be in control. Your job is to know what to do. And when you don't have that sense of really completeness around what it is that you're trying to accomplish, there's a slight erratic, feeling that a person could have. But sometimes you have to surrender to the process and just, let go of the control. So those are some of the things that I do to try to maintain.
And kind of going back to the beginning of you talking about this, I find it fascinating that, you took the advantage of COVID, right? Which sounds weird to say, but the advantage COVID of not having to be in an office every day or not having to be out in the world every day and kind of being forced to be homebound, and ran with it, while there's others out there, myself included, who just like the weight of everything going on at that time, COVID, we're not going to get political here, but just the state of the world that was then and kind of now, it just kind of weighed on me, and with my own personal shit, like I crumbled when it came to creative stuff. I said, I just can't, you know what? I can't do it anymore. I that's when I surrendered. Like I was literally like, I just can't do this anymore. There's only so much my brain can handle. And right now it's not being funny. It's not sitting around and talking. It's just like living, like, let me get to the next day.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. I surrendered. And that's like and now like in the beginning of this year, I was like, all right, I'm ready to come back. I'm ready to do it again. And it, and partially last year too, like, I mentioned, maybe off air, maybe on air, I don't remember, but I mentioned going to Fan Expo Philadelphia, which is something I've been doing since they were Wizard World. And last year was the first year I said, you know what, like I'm going to try to take our podcasting community and our creative arts community and set up a community table at Fan Expo. And they were very welcoming, and they did it again for us this year. So like last year kind of jump started it with getting involved creatively with the community, and then getting involved like with creatively myself with a show was a 2024 deal. And like, it's, again, I mean, so it sounds like obviously we've mentioned that you're a filmmaker, a producer, director. I know one of the parts of your bio I read, you're a talk show host. So I'm assuming a podcast.
Yes. I'm actually in my second season. So, we have that in common. My first season was really all about relationships, interpersonal relationships, family relationships, intimate relationships. And I felt like I was so in my own little niche that it seems like that's all everybody talks about now. So I've actually taken a different departure, and this season is more about politics than anything.
Okay.
I think the fact that we're facing probably one of the more pivotal elections in our time. I think that what's
Yep.
happening right now overseas with geopolitical concerns.
Mm-hmm.
I think that right now there is a cultural political paradigm shift that's happening right now. I would love to be a person who's a culture carrier in that space. And, all I want to do is just have the conversation in a way that I feel isn't resonating and really be able to contribute to that aspect of politics. Yes, excited about that.
I love so just a little backstory about everything is awesome. Season 1 is literally years long, right? And because it was and like 100 and some episodes long because I wasn't a seasonal show. And then I took 4 years off because the world shut down and I couldn't handle it. Unlike, you handled it appropriately. Not that I didn't handle it inappropriately. I handled it in a way that shut my show down. But
it was your way, it's your way.
Yeah.
So whether it shut the show down or whether it was delayed, right? It's sort of it's delayed gratification, right? You had to do it your way.
Yeah, absolutely. And which makes me love this show even more now, right? Because something I've been podcasting since 2007. So I've seen the industry like almost from its beginning, as the term podcast, I think, was coined in 2006. Internet radio is certainly older than that. Not much older, but certainly older. But I've been around since almost the beginning of podcasting, and I've seen it, grow and turn into what it is. And you mentioned what I love, and I don't know what your plan is when you go into season 3. You might not even know. But I love that your season 1 started off as one thing and your season 2 is like, yes, it's the same show, but we're pivoting to another direction. And to me, what I think about podcasting is that you have to, especially in the 2020s when it's so saturated. When people ask me advice about podcasting, I say, do it for you first and foremost. Cause you're not making money off this thing. Unless you get very lucky, you're not making money. But outside of doing it for yourself, always find ways to learn and innovate and do things differently. We always make sure that if we do this show live in a environment that allows us, we take on a more traditional, Conan O'Brien or late night feel. And we have a guest, we have our monologue, we have our guest, we have our comedian or our musician, and we play games and we have segments and stuff like that. And I have a co-host, I have my Andy or my Ed McMahon or whoever you want to put the sidekick role onto. I have that guy that comes with me to those live shows. And then we also love to do one of my favorite things to do, and we don't do it very often, is to sit down and play a role-playing game. Whether it's we've never done Dungeons and Dragons, but I have friends who are game designers in the area, and we take their game and we play it on the thing. And there's people that there's podcasts that do it better than me because that's all they do. But to be able to get a bunch of improv people from the city of Philadelphia together to play a silly game for an hour, and we just laugh. Wow. So I love when because my show largely is the same, which is what I want it to be, because I do those specials here and there that make it feel different and give me joy. But I also have toyed with other show concepts that are where you pivot from season to season, where you're the same show, but the topic might be slightly different.
Absolutely.
And I feel like I feel like for the last few years we've been saying, well, this is the most important election, but it's true. It happens to be that every 4 years it sucks. And it's pretty important for the last few years to get out there and vote. And, what a year, I think, to pivot your show to politics, because I don't know that it could be any, more frustrating than it is.
Absolutely. Yes. And, The interesting part is, you and I have so many parallels when it comes to this world of politics and being able to make sure that you stretch things out over a particular period of time, because I started this year with the same exact approach. I said, this is not going to be the typical, let's do, one episode a week. No, let's make sure we have something relevant, because
Right.
people respond more to relevance than they do
Yes.
product pushing, which is really what it can be labeled as, right? Especially in the corporate capacity. But for
Hmm.
me, one of the things that I'm much more interested in is the closer it gets to the election is of course, the larger than life stories that are going to come out, and how does that really affect us?
Hmm.
One of my next topics will be Project 2025, and really unpacking that, because I don't think that people really know what that is.
You're
Because
talking to one of them, so hit me with it. Because when it comes to politics, I am an advocate for voting and for having your voice heard, but I'm also very upfront and saying I'm an idiot. Like, I do what I can, but like a lot of that stuff goes right over my head, or I don't have time to necessarily devote to reading up as much as I should, because you know what, that is very important. I should have more time or make more time for it. But hit me about Project 2025.
so the Cliff Notes version is when, some people say if. I think the way that things are set up, the way it's going to be is, unfortunately, I do think that the madman called Donald J. Trump is will be in the White House again.
Oh
And
God, don't say that.
I mean, for me, there are people who feel whatever kind of way about him. That's neither here nor there. But for me, it's about policy. And Project
Mhm.
2025 is a very, very, very extensive initiative. And there are a couple things that I think will resonate with individuals. Number one is, I'm going to name three because it's pretty extensive. The first one is, and this is a GOP initiative, right? Trump is just the figurehead of it. Is
Right.
what they want to do is they want to, number one, remove our neighborhood police that we have such great relationships with. Some people disagree with that, but I would rather have that relationship with them than the military.
Mhm.
One of his initiatives will be to send the military out for policing. That's just one, right?
Okay.
The next thing
That's
has
good.
to do with people who feel a certain way about abortion. I understand is a very personal decision, a decision that should be
Mhm.
made with the doctor, not like the government. Um,
Mhm.
and there are very extensive circumstances in which, for medical reasons, it has to be done, right, in order to save either
Yes.
life or both. However, that project, it will eliminate it unequivocally. So there's no reason why anyone will be ever able to have one again, right? And it's easier now
Mhm.
that Roe versus Wade was overturned. And the third thing is LGBT related issues. And I
Mhm.
understand that there are certain dynamics where people feel the way that they feel about them. If you feel that way, then you don't go marry the same gender. But that doesn't mean if out of a country of 360 plus million people, do our personal liberties, right? Should we put that on someone else? And there is a severe attack on that and making it just completely unlawful, up to the point of making sure that, going back to the whole early 1900s where you were pretty much institutionalized. It's pretty
Right.
severe, systemically, right? That's what that initiative says. But I think that, for me, it's such an important topic because, number one, Trump is not going to say these things, but in terms of his administration and the people that he's putting together behind the scenes, like the federal judges and the Supreme Court, this is what this is what all of these ingredients are spelled out. And so, yes, I understand elections are important, but if you have the figurehead that's putting people on certain benches and certain people in administrations to be able to carry out certain things, what this season of the Brian Reveal Show will be about is to give you the Cliff Notes version and to make it so digestible that it's going to give you at least a state of awareness that you have not had before. And it, I want to tell it in such a way, or at least position it in such a way that a person has to feel compelled to do something about it. And I think voting is just one layer of it, but activism is how you get missions accomplished.
Right. And I'll tell you, like, this is your Cliff Notes version you just gave me and all my audience. I almost never like write things down during the show, right? Like I usually just deal with that afterwards. I wrote Project 2025 down so I could look more into it because now I'm a little bit more hopeful, right? Like I'm hopeful that we don't put the madman back in, right? But and like me personally, you know what? I'm glad that we're going here. This is not something that we do often on the show is get political. But I do enjoy it when it's a great conversation. And, you know, personally, I don't think either option is great, right? Like in 2016, I didn't think either option. No, wait, 2020. I'm sorry. 2020. I didn't think either option was great, but there's a clear difference between a man who has like empathy and cares for people and one who just cares for himself. And my opinion has always been, listen, like, I know that you're never going to get the perfect politician. So like throw that out the window right away. And if your option is like, I'll say it, the devil himself or anyone else is almost better. Yes. Like, except for the actual devil, maybe, you know, like it is insane to me that for what has now been 8 years, more than 8 years of our lives is the conversation of Donald Trump, who I might be the first time I've named him on this show. But the conversation of Donald Trump in politics as our president, the fact that we're going on a decade makes me sick.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes us all sick.
Yeah. And it's like,
we just made history today, Kevin. We're broken ground. Unfortunately, on someone that, Whoopi Goldberg says, you know who.
And going back to like, I don't know, in the relation to this episode, it was probably a week or two ago. We sat down and spoke to Tonya Todd, who is an actress, a writer, an activist out in Las Vegas and the West Coast. And that was another episode that like went in a direction I didn't expect it, because it was like, well, first it was all nerdy stuff, which is what I always expect on this show. But then it migrated to activism. And, you brought that up, and I totally agree. I think there's like, there's so many different levels of activism that what I always say, whatever people are comfortable with, is how you should get involved. Because like not everyone, especially in 2020, when people were losing eyes because they were getting hit in the face with gas canisters or whatever from military, police, whoever, some people can't take that risk. And I 100% am like, oh, I agree with you. Don't take that risk. You got a family to take care of, but there's always ways that you can get involved. And for me, like my most basic activism is telling people to go out and vote, which, as you said, is a small part of it, but not just going out to vote on these big elections, because yes, they matter, hands thrown up in the air, but it's the primaries and the off year elections that matter, because the primaries is your opportunity to find people in your party that best align with your values and get them on the ballot for November, so that when you're voting for them, whether it's a big year like this or it's an off year, they have their best shot of being in office to represent what you feel. And to me, politics has never been trickle down. It never will be trickle down. In order to enact change, I think you need to build up your local community and have a relationship with the politicians there. And if you have politicians who want to ban books, and you don't agree with that, like the president isn't gonna necessarily make that change. More than likely not. That's going to be you going out and voting on those off years to make sure that the people that don't want to ban books, the people that don't want to ban abortion, the people that don't want to take away rights from women and from the queer community, that's when you go and get those people in power. And I that's been my biggest thing, because there's so many people that I know in real life that say voting doesn't matter, but like literally people have won by a single vote in those off-year elections and have maybe saved lives because a monster's not in office.
Wow, that's very powerful. And speaking of the midterms and the local elections, that's one of the things I'm actually loudest about, because let's say, for example, you get a traffic ticket, or God forbid you get behind the wheel, and you had, I don't know, maybe an aspirin, and you get popped for whatever that local jurisdiction qualifies that as. If you have someone who's no nonsense, you're not supposed to, then that could really determine how much of a penalty you get, right? And so those things are very, very important. And we also have to, I think a lot of what people come to the polls with are largely self-interests. But I do think that you said something that to me was very, very valuable. And that's having a sense of community. What kind of community do you want to live in? Because one day, and this is, for me, it's about a global community, because life moves us in 1,000 different directions. There were so many people in New York, and they all are in Texas now, because of the pandemic. Your life will shift. And nobody saw COVID coming. And now, those New York politics don't necessarily translate to Texas. Like, what does that even look like? And so for me, building that sense of community outside of politics is also, everyone putting their phone down, and, you're sitting at a table. Hi, how are you? How's your day going? And just having a meaningful conversation with the people in your community, whether it's in the grocery store. And I know it sounds like kumbaya, but, and for some people, they're never going to do it. But look at what happens if you don't.
Right. Absolutely. And, so along those lines, and I personally haven't done it quite yet because, again, time. But I will say, I'm very lucky, despite, I don't know if you've ever heard of the town called Levittown, but Levittown, there's a Levittown, Pennsylvania. There's a Levittown, New York on Long Island. Once upon a time, there was one in New Jersey. I think there's one in Puerto Rico. But William Levitt built these towns, and he was a complete racist and awful human being. That being said, at least my Levittown in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is another name that might be familiar if you're into politics, because we tend to be on the map when they're talking about, this county. But I'm very lucky that in my area of Levittown, like right now, as it stands, the community and our leaders mostly aren't monsters. There's a few, right? But I'm lucky, and I don't feel the need to have to storm my town hall meetings or anything, because things are going somewhat well. Now, again, that doesn't mean it's perfect. I probably should be going, and I probably should be more active. But because there's no urgency there, right? I don't necessarily feel the need. That being said, I think that those places are a great opportunity for you to meet, especially if you want to meet with the community and make change. Meeting with your community and engaging with your community, like you said, is great. And I think that everyone should be doing that. I try to do that when I'm out in the world. I try to be friendly, smile. I try not to let my day get to me and affect how I treat other people. And even if it's as small as a, hey, how you doing, as I walk by people, or as we do in Philadelphia, go Birds. That's I try to do that because that will, every time someone sees me wearing my Eagles hat or my Phillies hat and they say, go Birds, go Phils, or whatever,
Right.
it's a smile on my face because it's just that 1 second of interaction. I don't know who this person is or what they stand for, but that 1 second of interaction of us agreeing that go Birds, like agreeing that the Eagles for us are the greatest sports team in the history of sports.
Mm.
But if you want to make change with that community, I always say that like you'll find if you go to these things at the end of the day, because I've been to a few, not enough to like be meaningful, but I've gone to a few, and you'll find that more times than not, regardless of where you sit on the political aisle, that everyone in your community wants the same thing, and that's to be safe, to have your kids be safe, and for the community to be safe.
Yes.
So like at the end, it shouldn't matter if you're red, you're blue, whatever. You meet at these things and you can get a lot more accomplished by working together. And that doesn't mean you should accept the fact that the people across the aisle are against the queer community, or whatever, because to me, that's like a basic human right. But it also doesn't mean that you should just instantly ignore them and not sit at the table in your community and try to come to some sort of understanding about your community and about what it means to be safe. Because
Absolutely.
honestly, I don't know that they're going to say, oh, we got to get rid of all the queer people. That's an extreme.
Yes.
It's an extreme that exists, and it's an extreme that some people are going to bring up. But I think in a community setting, town hall thing, likely you'll find better things to agree upon or to talk about to make sure your community is safe.
Yes. And I think that, we expect so much of our politicians, but I think once we get to a point, and I believe in polarity, so there's no way that everybody's going to be 100% on the same page. However,
right.
I do think that we have to have a conversation about what that means, so we all can, because I don't expect everyone to like me. I know I'm not going to like everybody because,
right.
I'm not sure if you've ever been to Dallas, but road rage, that'll make you hate a lot of people.
I've been Dallas to once. That was a bad sentence. I've been to Dallas. Oh my God. I have not had enough coffee today, Brian.
Yeah.
And guess what?
Right.
The magic of editing isn't going to fix this because I leave it all in. I leave it all in. I accept that I'm a fool, Brian. I've been to Dallas once when I was in my 20s for work, and I was the typical Eagles fan, meaning I showed up to the airport head to toe Eagles green, went up to Dunkin', got a coffee, and the guy says, you're an Eagles fan. I said, I am. What of it, buddy? And he said, and this was like in the early aughts when we were doing pretty well with McNabb, and he goes, you guys are good. I'm like, oh, okay. I turned around with my coffee and said, we are assholes. And I went about my day.
Hilarious. Yeah. And that, I'm surprised you were met with that kind of reception because, the Cowboys and the Eagles fans, that is a quintessential rival.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I truly believe if I went there today in 2024 and did the same thing, it would be probably worse. I feel like the internet, because here's the big difference between I think this was 2004, 2005. I was out there. And the difference in those, holy smokes, 20 years is that the internet is bigger than ever. The global community can interact more than ever. Yes. And the fan base of both communities, not just Dallas, Eagles community as well, is so loud that even if you are a good person, you might get caught up in it. And it just does not spell good news. Yep. If an interaction like I just described happens, I truly believe that if I did that now, it would probably maybe not end up with anyone going to jail, but it would probably be very, very loud conversations and yelling.
I don't know. There's a few Eagles fans here, but I could tell you that they talk crap to each other. It's in a confined space. It's in a cigar lounge. Like who's gonna who's
Right.
I don't know though. But I don't know if you were in AT&T Stadium or whatever it is now. I think it'll be totally different now. It'll be totally different because Eagles fans you guys have a reputation.
Yes. But here's what I will say. So I'm assuming. So are you from Dallas or?
I moved here from New York. I've been in Dallas
Okay.
now for my God, like I think 10 years, over 10 years, maybe 11, close to 11.
So are you a Giants fan?
Not anymore.
Is that for your own safety? Blink if you need help.
Listen. We started a conversation with mental health, and I think you're going to have me have a breakdown again if I become a Giants fan again. Yeah, those days are over.
Here's what. Yeah, I think you're right though. Like in confined spaces, you're absolutely right. Everyone I ever interact with in real life, it's never gotten heated. Now, I also don't interact. Like I don't go to Cowboy games that are in Philly because A, I mean they're expensive, but B, like I don't know, like I love going to football games, but do I really want to put myself in that environment where, danger could happen?
Yeah.
But to your point about our reputation, which we have, I don't deny our stereotype. How come no one ever talks about the year we beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl and how everyone was setting things on fire in the area?
No,
I know. Like I have a buddy that lives in Rhode Island. He's like, no one's talking about it, but literally, like people are setting things on fire and like just rioting in the streets right now because you guys won. I was like, where's the national coverage? Where is it?
I think we expected it though. That's probably why. I think we talked about it in Dallas for maybe about 30 minutes or so. Because that was was that 2 years ago?
That was 2000. No, that was God, so long. It was pre-COVID. That was 2000 and technically 2018, but it was the 17 season.
Okay. Okay. Oh wow, that was longer than I thought.
Now we were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, but we lost to Kansas City.
Oh, okay. And I think it was rioting also when you made it to the Super Bowl.
Oh, well, yes. Okay, so listen, they grease those poles for a reason in Philadelphia. Okay.
I remember having that conversation, and I could tell you that it was like, well, this is what happens in Philly. I don't think it was. I don't think anybody was.
Well, no. But when we won, it happened in New England too, because they were so upset that we beat them. And yes, of course, there was coverage all over the place about Philly setting fire to the street. I mean, there was a guy that I think jumped off a building after he won the Super Bowl. And hey, you know what? Good for him. If that's how he wants to celebrate with a back injury, I'm all for it. But it's always funny to me how much coverage Philadelphia gets. I think there's a few cities that get that coverage, and Philadelphia is one of them. And we never live it down. But I know for a fact that it's happened in other cities, and it just kind of quietly gets swept under the rug after a day or two, which is fine. You know what? I'll take that. When we cross the line, I call it out for sure. But the fact that we all call it rioting, but we're not actually rioting. We see the worst. They show the worst, the worst of the worst that happens. But that's one person out of a million people that are being trolls after we win the Super Bowl or after we go to the Super Bowl. For the most part, people are just having fun. Maybe they're crossing a couple different lines, climbing poles and jumping off and but for the most part, I want to say that it is actually not as bad as the media makes it out to be, which, I think going back to some of our original discussions is also a huge part of the issue with the world today is that the media blows a lot of things out of proportion, partially because we live in this global community that you have to be at the first to report something. So you're not fact checking.
Yeah. not fact checking, and um, not wanting to be authentic, to the narrative, and I think that that's another layer of, this fake news, as you put it a
Mhm.
moment ago, that we're inundated with. And
Right.
you're going to have a lot of people questioning reality. And I think that when you factor in algorithms where
Hmm.
the information that I'm looking for is not even accessible to me because of
Hmm.
algorithms, and
Yeah.
vice versa, I think
Mhm.
we're reaching a very um, critical point in what I see as a cyber warfare on our minds, on our consciousness, and which will also turn into wreaking havoc on our relationships. Because
Right.
think about how much time people spend literally scrolling a day and
Yeah.
consuming everything that they take in, right? That is
Right.
shaping an individual psyche. And so you may look at, and right now there just seems to be this gender war like crazy, and you look at a lot of the information according to the algorithm that a person may take in and say, wow, a guy may think that women are like this, or you have women who think, well, he's not going to treat me like this because all he watches are big, full figured voluptuous women on Instagram. He's not going to look at me.
Right.
That's what people are internalizing because that's all they take in. And so these algorithms are really, I think that I understand the sales aspect of it, but like we're tired of being used as commodity. We're tired of being used
Mhm.
as products. We're tired of being
Yeah.
used as product pushers. And
Mhm.
I think more work has to be done in this space, but we have to demand it. You know.
Yeah. And going back to like the algorithm and stuff, like here's what I've kind of taken away from, maybe it's not even the algorithm I'm talking about, but the 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 internet tends to show us like the most loudest out there and the most negative out there, right?
Yeah.
If you paid attention to the internet, one would assume that um, that everything is going poorly for the queer community because of how loud the other people across the aisle are.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say that it's going great for the queer community because obviously there's a ton of struggles that have, I mean, been steps back for them because of the 2016 election and that 4 years of pure evil.
Mhm.
Um, but what's I find remarkable is if you do a little bit more research. I was at Fan Expo, going back almost full circle now at this point. I was doing a panel on the 40-year anniversary of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which
Oh,
feel old now
oh.
because
There should be a larger community because I think I probably had every one of those, like Raphael, Michelangelo. Okay, well, I'm gonna have a brain freeze now. I should know this. Um,
Donatello,
Donatello and who's the other one?
Leonardo,
Leonardo.
Leonardo. Uh, but they so I'm going to diverge for just a second. When I was prepping for Fan Expo Philadelphia, um, to figure out what panels I wanted to do, if you look at 2024 and the anniversaries of pop culture, you'll see a list that starts off small for 5 year, 10 years, starts to grow at 15 and 20 years, 25, 30 years, gets a little bigger. And then boom, the biggest list of them all is 40 years. 1984 was huge for a lot of IP. And then as you get to like 50, 60, it starts to get, a smaller list again. I mean, just off the top of my head, Turtles, Ghostbusters, I believe Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep.
I think GI Joe, just four properties off the top of my head that turned 40 this year.
Mm.
Crazy for pop culture. Anyway, during that panel, not during that panel, on my panel, I had this comic book writer, Jadzia Axelrod, who wrote a few things for DC Comics. One of them is a hero she created called Galaxy. And in 2022, they released a trade paperback of Galaxy, the Prettiest Star. I apologize if to Jedzia, I may have messed up that subtitle yet again. Anyway, and it's about being trans. The character is a female alien who disguises herself as a teenage boy, and it's about being trans. And talking to her after the panel, we were talking about it, and she said this is one of their best-selling books. They're on their third printing already. So back to my original point is, like, if you just listen to the loudest and the negative, you're not going to know that some of the good things, and speaking of the queer community specifically, is that, like, they're doing okay as far as, like, you know, like DC wouldn't be doing it and wouldn't be continually printing it, and so many other companies wouldn't be supporting Pride and the queer community if they didn't. I mean, yes, there is they're doing it for money, right? But they obviously believe in it somewhat, because they keep on doing it, and see, like, there's a community out there of people. And yes, I'm sure a large part of that community buying that comic book is from the queer community, but then you have people like me who, again, I'm an ally. I'm very, very ignorant to everything about that community because I'm still learning, right? Like, we're close enough in the age range where, like, there's a 90s sensibility that is not right, but we grew up in, right? So and shamefully, I'm part of it. Like, I was part of that community that, like, made those types of jokes in the 90s and early 2000s. The one thing, and that's why I'll never ever fault James Gunn for what happened to him and when he got fired from Disney, because he changed as a person. He proved that he changed as a person. And I think you have to allow that kind of grace for the fact that, like, yes, things live forever now on the internet, but, like, just because they do doesn't mean you're still that person. Now, again, it doesn't mean that it was right. Making gay and queer jokes in the 90s wasn't okay. It was just accepted. And what you have to do now is acknowledge that, oh, we were wrong. Like, that was wrong to do. And you have to do the work to, like, make amends with that. And for me, what that means is owning it, right? Like, owning the fact that I made those jokes, and B, showing that, like, I'm not just, saying I am an ally. Like, I go and I support someone who I consider a friend, Jadzia Axelrod, by not just by buying her comic, but talking about it as often as I can, and talking about all the other work she does as a trans writer in DC Comics, and what she does in DC Comics to make sure that community is seen. And there's obviously a lot more I can do, and I, you have to continually kind of go in full circle again, like, just as yourself instead of as your product. Like, you have to learn and you have to innovate yourself, to be a better ally to everybody. I mean, let's be honest. Like, we should just be, as humans, allies to one another. But right now, me, a 40-something white dude from the suburbs, I don't need help, right? Like, I'm safe, for the most part. But I need to do a better job at recognizing and being a better ally to, the Black community, to the Asian community, to the queer community, and recognizing that, like, it's not as easy for everybody else.
Absolutely. And even, as an African American myself, I know there's lots of resistance to what's happening right now in Israel. Lots of conversations around, the unknown. And then there's lots of resistance because of the relationship that the African American community has with the United States, or with colonialism, and many different factors and many different parallels. But, my thing is, we could either look at life through the lens of trauma, or we could look at life through the lens of possibility and connectivity, and having an opportunity to not allow the trauma to navigate how we show up. And I know it's easier said than done, It's not supposed to be easy because we spend our whole lives in development being traumatized and not having any say so in the trauma, and being traumatized. So
Right.
I think that we all, on a human basis, because this is why you and I are again on the same page with that. I would rather walk through life personally, and I'm not encouraging everybody to do this because everyone has their own process, but I personally would rather walk through life seeing myself and seeing others as humans first. I know that there are other dynamics to who we are, but I'd rather meet on that level first because that is the simplicity in which we can form a common bond. Let's start
Yes.
there, and then let's start to unpack where we can be in relationship with each other despite all of these differences that, everyone says that we should entertain,
Right. Right.
because that's where the
Right.
breakdown happens is in that division.
And this is something I don't talk about too much because normally this show is talking about Batman, Kevin Smith, and Marvel, and then moving on to our guest. But this has been a great and serious conversation, and I don't think I've ever mentioned this on air. But it's as a parent, and I don't have anyone like I don't have any firsthand experience because I never got a talk like this before. But like as a parent of shocker white kids, having the conversation with them about like, listen, your friends across the street who are black or half black or whatever they might be, you can't be silent. Like when things are bad for them, you need to stick up. Not stick up, that's the wrong term, but you need to stand up with them. And you need to recognize that you walk a life of privilege that hopefully one day won't exist because we'll all be seen as equals. But you need to use that privilege, and you need to make sure that the conversation you and I having are very different than the conversation their dad's having with them about when they have to drive and what that means as a black person in America, and how much. And I don't like saying this all the time because I don't want to speak for black people, but there's clearly a difference in how we are looked at when we're in a car, you and me. And this kind of goes back full circle how we'd rather have our community police over military, which I think is accurate, 100% accurate. Does not mean that police are perfect because of just built-in racism, and but I told my kid, I was like, there's a clear difference. When I get pulled over for not having my inspection up to date, there's no other worry I have in the world when I get pulled over. But God forbid a black man gets pulled over. Why does he have to think, okay, am I going to get arrested right now because I'm in a car?
Or worse.
It's or worse, absolutely, or worse, which is nuts to think about. And the whole point of that is that like I have to assume, and maybe I shouldn't assume, but I have to assume that as a black man, you had conversations with your father, he had conversations with his father, you had conversations with your kids about what it means to be black in America. While me as a white man, I've never had a discussion with my parents, and I know my dad didn't have a discussion with his parents about what it means to be white in America and the differences as to why you need to have that, use that privilege that you have to like just be a good person and make sure that like, even if it's as simple as getting out of your car, opening up your phone and recording a police interaction with a person of color being pulled over. Like that's you should do that because you don't know what's going to happen.
But the thing about it is that, I came up in the 80s. My parents are very young. And I've never had that conversation with my parents. My parents, because also in the black community, there's this narrative, which I'm probably sure most people know about, is that you have to be twice as good. I've never had that conversation with my parents. My parents were more focused on making sure that my heart was good and education was something that was important. They didn't like push it to say go out and make all A's. I made all A's because I'm a perfectionist. But I think that I think that they just, I don't know, they were young and fancy free and they just wanted to have a good time. But I think that one of the things that I learned about, the blackness is what we call it, is, it shows up in so many different ways. And I think that interactions with the police are actually a very small part of the Black experience. I think our issues are mostly economic. Actually, that is the number one. It's access to capital. It's access to opportunity. And I think that is much more devastating to the Black community than, and I'm not minimalizing this, right? Because a denied application is not, an interaction with the police. But I do think that, in an economic country, I do think that having access to what is presumed wealth really does affect your relationships, and it affects your perceived value, right? And I do think that for me, that's definitely something. And even in the political spectrum, when African Americans are discussed on a political stage, it's always this law and order, which is an insult, right? Like we're not we're not predisposed to some weird chemical that makes us more prone to violence. It's just poverty. Poverty will make anyone, put themselves or put someone into a position where your safety and legal protections are compromised. But I do think that's a large part of it. And, I'm happy we're having this conversation because I think that that's an aspect that has never been made available to listeners at large in any forum. So I think that if this is something that we can utilize as an opportunity to bridge the gap, I think that having access to capital and making sure that we can partner on those opportunities, I think for us will be a large. To me, I think it should be a much more burgeoning conversation when it comes to the relationships that different ethnicities and different political views have with each other.
Yeah. I could not agree more. And I wanted to pull up because I didn't remember the author's name, and spoiler alert, I'm not going to be able to pronounce it, but I think, and I don't think this is just like hey, you're white, you should read this. I think anyone can read this book and take from it. But one of the books that I read, in 2020, I tried to read up on race because again, at that point, 35 years, 36 years, I never really thought about it because I always considered myself like a human being with friends who were just white, black, whatever. Like I never really thought about even my lack of speaking up or anything like that being affecting anybody. So 2020 was a huge eye opener for me as a white person. And one of the books I picked up was So You Want to Talk About Race by, I'm not going to even pronounce it. I'll put it in the show notes, but the first name is Ijeoma, last name Oluo. And she's actually has I think it's a Substack that I subscribe to, and has a lot of great stuff that is related to the work she does in writing and activism and stuff. But that is one of the, and I think it was also one of the big recommended books in 2020 when obviously everyone was talking about race. And I think it's a wonderful book that I took a lot from and realized a lot about myself after reading it. And obviously it didn't, fix anything. It's just open again. It kind of going back to kind of a theme of this show is opening up my eyes and taking ownership of something. And that was, if nothing else from that book accomplishes anything with whoever reads it, I think that's a great takeaway is I have to own the fact that XYZ happened, whether that's I failed at something, whether that's I was a shitbag in the 90s and made queer jokes, whether that's, you know what, I realized in 2020 that like, yeah, as a white person, I guess I was a little racist in the 90s because I didn't think that I thought that was okay then. And here I am so many years later. I know I'm a better person, but like, here are the things, like, I know I said some of these things not thinking in the 90s because that's like going back to it. Like, that's what was accepted then. And it doesn't make it okay at all. I would like to say, even as much as I love the 90s, Brian, I love the 90s a whole lot.
love the 90s.
but the 90s was, what's that?
It was some of the best music.
I agree. And I'm not a music guy, but movies and television and just pop culture in general, the feel of the 90s, there's so much to love about the 90s, but the 90s was also a time, and the early 2000s, a time of like shock jock, a time of crudeness being accepted, and a time of where, comedy should be about punching up, but there was a lot of comedy that was punching down in the 90s. That's something that you can't get rid of. It happened. It's the past. All we can do is learn from it and take, accept that you were part of it, whether it was being a shitbag or just letting it go without, speaking up. Right. So, and I think that's what, so you want to talk about race, really open my eyes to is like, okay, like everyone's done something that they should be ashamed of in their past. And now it's time to own it and try to find ways to be better and stuff. So that's, I never make book recommendations, and hell, who would have thought? Who would have thought when everything is awesome?
I'm so happy.
So you want to talk about race?
This is a historical show today.
It is. And you know what? It's this is, I want to be respectful of your time, my time. We've gone a little longer than we normally do, which is okay. I love a good conversation. That's what this show is first and foremost. And sometimes like we barely scratch the surface on the things that you do. And all that means, Brian, is that we're going to have you back sometime in season 3, because this is one of those, and it's, I don't know about you as a podcast host, but there's some episodes you go into with a guest and you just don't know, like you don't know much about the guest, so you don't know how it's going to go. So it's weird, just like, I hate using the term, like I'm just so happy and surprised that this went so well. But that's because I literally had like 2 lines on you entering this conversation.
I know, right? But do you mind if I introduce myself to your audience?
Oh, you know what? That's here. You know what? At the end of the show, that's the perfect time. We should have done that. Yes, Brian, please let the people know who you are. Because I mean, they just don't know after an hour and 12 minutes.
Wow. This is how conversations start out. It starts to be one thing, and then it starts to be revolutionary, and then it starts to be, a return back to the beginning. Everybody, first of all, Kevin, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Brian Reveals. I am a talk show host of the Brian Reveal Show, which is now streaming on the Dynamite Network. You can get the Dynamite Network just by typing it in just as it is in your web browser, or after you sign up for a subscription, you could actually download the app on Apple. I think it's the Apple App Store, as well as Google Play. Cool. My topics are pretty, I want to say, I like to push boundaries a little bit. So, don't expect a traditional style, but expect to be able to navigate the experience on the Brian Reveal Show in a way that will keep you on the edge of your seats. You're gonna laugh, and you're gonna find certain moments intense. So I'm very, very proud of that platform. I'm also a filmmaker. I'm working on a documentary currently, which is currently in production. It'll also be streamed on the Dynamite Network. The documentary is called Take No Prisoners, The Lavinia Masters Story. This is a very powerful film or will be very powerful because it follows a story of a woman who was unfortunately assaulted at the age of 13. But because of that trauma and because of her journey to healing, she fought for many years very tirelessly for advocacy because her rape kit sat on the shelf for many, many, many years, right? And through her dedication and through her perseverance, right, she actually had the governor in 2019 sign a law to get those rape kits off the shelf in 2019. This is Governor Greg Abbott in Texas. It's Texas House Bill 8, and it was historical, right? And the bill was signed after her name, the Lavinia Masters Act, right? Specifically devoted to getting those rape kits off the shelf to give these women and survivors a chance at healing, right? By going after their predecessors and it's not predecessors, but going after their attackers in a very aggressive way. So that's probably going to me. And I'm working on a few films, but I think this is probably going to be my most prolific and pivotal work that I think I will do in the art and space of being an activist, right? Really wanting to help women globally. So that's something that, my company, that the network is working very tirelessly on. I will say that we are taking donations. If you go to the website, the Dynamite Network, there's a donate button in the very bottom. If you want to contribute to this film and project, not only will it help complete the film, however, a portion of those proceeds will be given to women who have been sexually assaulted, trafficking, as well as children who have been sexually assaulted. So that's me. That's what I'm working on.
It's wild because I feel like in maybe only once in the last few weeks that I've been doing interviews, I've said I got goosebumps listening to my guest talk about something. Which even if it's only one other time, it's wild that it's happened multiple times in the last few weeks listening to my guest talk about something. Now, very different topics. My other guest was opening up and showing me he's an artist and he made these what he calls immortal cards, trading cards, and he was opening up the Brandon Graham one of a Philadelphia Eagles fame. So I got goosebumps watching him open it up and like show me what the card looks like. Very different vibe as to why I got goosebumps listening to you speak about that documentary and the story behind it. Yes. Which is fascinating. And listen, we had a great conversation today, so I'm not upset that we didn't get to talk more about that. But it is, and I'm sure by the time we get you back on for season 3, at least I hope this film has made it its way to the world so everyone can go and watch it. You guys, if you're driving or you're somewhere where you can't go and visit everything that Brian just talked about, I'll make sure to have it in the show notes as well. Brian, is there anywhere else that you want them to come find you on the internet? That sounds aggressive, right? Like, come find me on the internet. That's not what I meant, but you know.
Let's see. The Dynamite Network. That's where the show season 1 and season 2. You could access that. And yeah, just you can find me on the Dynamite Network.
To wrap this up on something that has nothing to do with anything we've talked about, except for maybe the history of podcasting / being on the internet. I love that in 2024, I'm finding more and more people shortening their plugs to just go to this one website, and that's where you can that's my hub. It used to be a laundry list of things, and now, like myself included, I'm like, just go to thatnerdykev.com. You'll find everything you need there. Yes. So I love it. That's just a little thing that I've noticed these in the last few weeks here recording the show. Brian, thank you so much for doing this and for being so understanding for I think we rescheduled once and I think we were like, I completely forgot to schedule something with you earlier in April. So you've been incredibly understanding, and I really, again, when I have a hard time, when I don't want to let the episode go, Brian, it's a good episode because I don't want to let this conversation go, but I have to. We have lives outside of this, so yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. This has been truly a great experience, and excited to continue to follow and support. So, congratulations on what you're doing, and I look forward to continuing to support you.
Once again, thank you to Brian for coming on the show and having a wonderful conversation with me. You heard me saying in the interview, this was a lot like my Tonya Todd interview. I was expecting us to talk about one thing, and it led into a very serious conversation about mental health, about activism to a degree, and really about politics, which is something I don't like to bring up on this show a lot, not because I'm afraid that I want to anger a certain side of the political aisle, but that's not what this show is. Everything is Awesome is a show where we talk about awesome things. It's a show to escape reality. I liken it to a conversation that you're having with a couple people in a bar for the first or second time that you're hanging out. Not a date, but just a hang. Just two people getting to know one another. Two people having an interesting conversation. And I guess that's what this was, because I loved this conversation. That being said, we don't get into politics on this show very often because I want this to be an escape. I want this to be a show you can come to and for 45 minutes to an hour and a half, escape the hellhole that is the United States of America, planet Earth, whatever it is. You might not have the same struggles as some of us here in America. You may not have the same struggles of your neighbor or whatever. Maybe you're just sad. Maybe you, like me, have just lost, and it's been a couple months. It hasn't been just losing, but have just lost a parent. Maybe you need something to just unwind. And I apologize if this episode was a little too heavy for you and you were trying to escape. But we still had a great conversation about things that I think were fun to talk about. Some things were not fun to talk about because it was a reality into what our world is. That being said, I hope you walk away from this episode and see that there were two people talking passionately about community engagement and engaging with your community, and how that it is important for us to get involved with the midterms, involved with local politics. Voting at every election is super important, but fixing your local community isn't going to happen every 4 years when you vote in the presidential primary or presidential general election. However, in those local elections, in those midterm elections, those are the people that will help change your community. All right, folks, thank you so much. I hope you had a good time listening to this. Catch us in just a couple days when we sit down with some really cool people to play Star Wars Edge of the Empire for the 200th episode of Everything is Awesome, right here, only on awesomepodcast.com.